Alright, so you guys of course already saw this outfit, but like I said, I was going to film multiple videos today. So I wanted to kind of talk about like my job and my career, because I know a lot of people have questions about it, and it's kind of confusing because there's multiple sides to what I do, and then there's also so many options within the district. So people hear, oh, I'm a teacher, oh, I'm this or I'm that. So technically, the way it is broken down is I am behavior support. So what that means is I'm not hands-on with curriculum. I am in the classroom, but my job is not to do the curriculum, is not to facilitate student learning. It's to facilitate student behavior. So the classrooms that I work in are self-contained ESE, EBD units. Last year I was in self-contained ESE, ASD units. So ASD is autism spectrum disorder, EBD is emotional behavior disorder. They're very different, they are not the same, yet one child can be diagnosed with both items. So they're not the same, but you can have both. We actually have one student who is labeled ASD, ESE, EBD, ODD. ODD is oppositional defiance disorder. So what I do is, my job is to learn the behaviors, understand the behaviors, and figure out how to not fix, but to curb, to minimize, to limit. So my job is to eliminate stimuli in the classroom. So for example, for EBD, I'm going to speak about what I do this year, because what I did last year was a little bit different. So for EBD, the students are triggered all kinds of ways. There's not, I don't want to say there's not one way that's the same, because that would be me giving you false information. You could have multiple students who are triggered the same way, but they might also stem off into different triggers that do not correlate to each other, that do not relate to that other student. So EBD, emotional behavior disorder, basically means that a student is unable to process and show emotion the same way any other person would. So this student could get upset and get frustrated. First of all, it's very quickly, it's very abrupt. You almost have to be quick and on your toes to see it happening. It's not a prolonged thing where you can poke and poke and poke and then all of a sudden it's this big eruption. Usually it's an eruption over very small things. We have students who get upset over their pencil breaking, or we're in middle school, so block schedule. I'm sure you guys know what block schedule is, where during testing, they'll even do an odd schedule or even schedule, meaning they don't go to all 7 periods. They will go to 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th, or they will go to 2nd, 4th, and 6th. That is something that is very hard and very frustrating for our students to understand and be able to do and facilitate on their own. It's something we have to do for them, because if we don't alleviate that stressor, it will cause them to get upset. And once they get upset, it's almost like their brains shut off. You're unable to bring them back down quickly, which is another goal. Of course, we have goals set. So we have a BIP, a behavior intervention plan. And what that BIP is that BIP states problem behaviors and expectations throughout the year, and things you can do to help reach those expectations. So one expectation could be student is able to verbalize why they're upset. Student is able to recognize and verbalize why they're upset. Student is able to acquire adult help appropriately when upset. Student is able to excuse themselves from activity and go to calm space or calm corner. So per the district, we are legally supposed to have a calm space in the classroom, which usually is just in the back of the classroom. It's its own corner. It has like a comfy chair, comfy pillows, and a space that the students are allowed to get up and separate themselves from whatever at that time is agitating them, and go to that space and hopefully bring themselves down from that agitation. So with all that being said, my job is to understand every student IEP and every student BIP. An IEP is a plan for learning. So a student requires all directions read to them. A student requires frequent breaks during testing. A student requires you to click the mouse for them. A student requires cool down walks when upset. A student, so That's what an IEP does. A BIP is more on the behavior side. So an IEP is more curriculum, cognitive based, and a BIP is all behavioral. So I read all of those BIPs, I read all of those IEPs, and I understand the student from the outside looking in. And then what I do is I go in the classroom and I meet that student, and I sit with that student, and I work with that student, and I learn what that student needs to succeed. I'm the person who documents, and when I say documents, there's multiple kinds of documents, and every school district is different. Every school within the district is different because we receive incoming students with documents completely different than ours. So take this with a grain of salt. This is just what I do every day. We have a behavior sheet which says like the problem that occurred, and then what the staff did, what the teacher and the staff did, and then what was the result. So like we could say student walked out of class without permission, student was verbally redirected and asked to return back to assigned area, student refused and remained in hallway for over 30 minutes. That would be the 3 bubbles we would fill out. Then from that behavior sheet, because those are running records, we would then do our record that is tally marks. So the sheet that is tally marks is broken down into it's not really on time period schedule, like it's not really like first period, second period, third period, but it's broken down almost hour to hour, which is close to our schedule minus like the lunch and things of that nature. So those tally marks, you can edit it per student, but most of our students kind of exert the same behaviors. So we don't really edit ours, but if you have students who are completely opposite sides of the spectrum, then you can edit these boxes and change them to what you're seeing. So for example, the boxes might say verbal aggression, physical aggression, elopement, refusal, things of that nature. And so within that hour, you tally mark every time you see that. What I found easier is the tally mark is easier to go back and do. So what I do is I do my running record. I keep those behavior sheets up to date to the minute. Usually I don't have to do too many behavior sheets in a normal day, but when the days are bad, the days are bad. Because have you ever heard or seen those videos of like people have triplets and one baby cries and the other baby cries and the other baby cries, and it's almost like the inevitable that they're all going to cry? That's the same thing here. Our students feed off of negative behavior and negative actions. So if we don't curb the problem within the moment, we're looking at an all-day problem with all student problem almost every time. We have a few students who have been able to almost accomplish their BIP to the maximum, where they are able to recognize their behaviors. They are able to have that behavior and exert that behavior because, of course, we're not here to change their behavior. We're here to alter it and help them cope with it and deal with it. So those students who are able to do that are now in a gen ed setting, which means they're in the normal classroom with normal students, rather than our self-contained setting is where they are with us in one classroom all day long. They do not go to multiple periods like a gen ed 7th grader, 6th grader, 8th grader, things of that nature. So from those documents, from the tally marks, we then have to graph it. We have to chart it. That graph shows spikes in behavior and peak times. Are there certain times of the month, certain times of the day that these behaviors we're seeing are heightened or more elevated in that nature? So my job is to kind of document the behavior, fix the behavior, not fix. I don't like using the word fix because I can't really fix it. I can alter it. I can help them deal with it. And I also am hands-on with the students. So I am CPI, which is our restraint training per the district. So when that student, there are certain times, of course, restraint is the last resort. You don't just do that because the student said no. You don't just do that because the student eloped. You do that when you feel as if there's no other option and that student is putting themselves or other students in harm's way. So we, of course, are restraint trained, so we have to restrain the students. We, of course, depending on the situation, students are Baker acted in the moment of a crisis because if a student inflicts harm or verbalizes harm to themselves or other, it is reasonable cause to be Baker acted. I have dealt with that a couple times this year, and it's actually pretty hard. It like hits home a little bit for me because I take my students very seriously. My students, like, it's almost like they're my kids. And I always joke with people, like, if I could just take them all home, I would. So seeing them have to be put in that predicament, and because it's almost like when they are in that situation, when they're in a crisis situation, you have to realize they're not themselves. You can see that trigger, you can see them change and them morph into somebody who is not that usual student that you're used to, that sweet, kind, loving, caring student. You can see that transition, and that's what makes it pretty hard for me, is that I know this isn't the student I'm used to. This is somebody else. So that's pretty much like my job in a nutshell. Is I'm not in charge of curriculum. I do curriculum. I print the CRMs. I get it all prepared for the teacher who is in there, because our unit is actually not fully staffed. So the teacher that we have is not a board certified teacher. They're either a substitute through Kelly Services or things like that. So I am in charge of all the curriculum. I input all the grades. I grade all the papers. The report cards are submitted through me, things like that. But my job is behavioral support. So behavioral technician is technically my job. So what I do is all supposed to be the behavior side, which I tend to prefer. People ask me all the time, well, why don't you just work in a gen ed setting? Why don't you just do a normal classroom? Why don't you work with normal kids? And I kind of hate that, because these kids are normal. They just deal with things differently. They need to learn coping mechanisms. They need to learn how to be angry, but a good angry, not like this off the charts kind of angry. So I don't know, is it stressful? Yes. Is it a lot of work? Yes. Do you get frustrated? Of course. Do I ask myself sometimes, what am I doing? All the time. But I genuinely love it. My team is amazing. The people I work with is amazing. The students are amazing. And they mean so well. And here's the thing with the students is, if you build that connection with them, they might be physically and verbally aggressive, but never towards you. They will never physically harm you. I have never, ever had a student throw a chair at me, a trash can at me, nothing. They might throw it in the direction, but it will not hit me. And then if one student is out of their mind one day and they choose to do that, all the other students are like, hold up, did you just hit Miss Teague with a chair, with a trash can? Hold on. But I've had really good luck, and most of the students, they know their boundaries. And you also have to realize they're upset, they're frustrated, they're not saying these things to physically hurt you. You cannot take any of it personally. You cannot take any of it to heart. It's not towards you. It's towards whatever made them angry in that moment. But you're the person standing here, so guess what? F you, F off, I hate you, you're a B word, you're this, you're that, because they're angry and you're the easiest, closest person for them to take it out on. So that's kind of my job in a snippet, in a little short synopsis summary. That's what I do every day. I work 8 to 5, 8 to 4. I get home at 5. And it's middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We do, even when they're in gen ed, we do check-ins. We go up to their classrooms. Usually I do core classes with them. So I'll do ELA, I'll do math, sometimes science, because science seems to be a little hard for most of our kids. Testing, usually we bring them out of the classroom and they test with us if they are in a gen ed setting, because their IEPs usually require a minimized testing area. So no more than 6 students usually. They also need questions read to them. They need directions read to them. So usually we just pull them and test them with us. They do take all normal state testing. They are not exempt from state testing. They take everything, the right score. They take FSA. They take iReady testing, all of that good stuff. So they do everything that is expected of any gen ed student. And we do bathroom breaks. A lot of our students require transport between classes. So if they go into gen ed, a lot of our students require to be within reasonable proximity of an adult during transitions. So usually we'll walk them to and from classes, but we don't like to smother them. So I don't usually let them know hey, I'm walking you to and from class. I usually just keep them within eyesight, not usually within arm's distance unless necessary. But just them kind of knowing you're behind them, a couple feet behind them, they usually behave. Some of our students require bathroom breaks, so they can't go to the bathroom to and from. by themselves. So the gen ed teacher will give me a call, or I'll get radioed because I do carry a walkie at all times. I'll get radioed and break the student, bring them to the bathroom, things like that. And then also, even though within the school there are APs and deans per grade level, for the EBD staff students, I am the dean and like the AP basically. So like the 6th grade dean and AP only deals with the students who are not staffed. So since I'm staffed, if there's an issue in the classroom, our unit gets called. So I respond to the fight in the classroom for our students, or the disruption, or things like that. A lot of times we just pull them out, we walk them, cool down walk. We will talk to them, usually call home depending on how bad the situation is. A lot of parents prefer email, so I'll email the parents. So basically you're like on your toes all day. There is some downtime, and when there is downtime, if you're ever in a job that has to do with behavioral support, take the downtime. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, take that 10 minutes, because you will need that 10 minutes for your sanity. So because a lot of times we do things that we don't ever think we would do in this job, and you're standing there doing it and you're like, hold on, I never thought I would ever be doing or saying these things that I'm saying, because you do sometimes have to pull some tricks out of nowhere and make things happen. So yeah, that's my job. We have a total of 9 students. We had 12 in the beginning of the year. We have 9 in our unit now. It is me and 3 other people on the unit staff. We of course have a behavior specialist, behavior tech, para support, teacher, which the teacher isn't really a teacher, but we work with it. We make it work. Yeah, so a lot of people ask me like, oh, you're a teacher, and the easiest way for me to explain it is yes, but the answer is no. I am behavior support staff, so I only facilitate student behavior, if that makes sense. That's what I do this year, currently, right now. So yeah, hopefully that explained a little bit of what I do, and hopefully that makes sense. This might all be gibberish to you guys. I'm not sure if anybody is interested in what I do, because it is crazy, it is hectic, it is physically and emotionally draining. It's mentally draining because you see a lot of things, hear a lot of things, and do a lot of things you never thought you would have to do or see or hear. And then of course the physical part with the restraints, and these are big kids. Most of the kids are much bigger than me, which is fine. We still make it happen. But yeah, I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I can't wait to do it again next year. And I dress normal. I go to work dressed like this with my hoops, my heels. If you follow me on Snapchat, sometimes I post OOTDs. But yeah, so I try to still keep it cute and classy, even when I'm restraining students or chasing them down the main road that they eloped on, and I'm sweating and it's Florida and it's humid and I'm in my pumps. But we got this. It's all good. But anyways, guys, thank you for listening to me just talk a lot in this video and the past video. But I just wanted to talk. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. Bye, guys.